Alright, how's it going everybody? It's Zuko, thanks for stopping by, and welcome to the February episode of the Preorder Roundup. Now some of you guys might be wondering, where's the January video? Well, to keep things brief, we did a stream about a month ago. It was a good time. It was also like 5 hours long, and Atlas claimed that stream because of one Persona 5 song, very cool of them. But that was a bit of a break glass in case of an emergency situation. I don't plan to do that very often. But considering we had one fest, the Kotobukiya collection, one hobby, and just like at the time I had a lot of work to do in real life because I need to make money, I just couldn't focus on doing the January video, film it and edit it, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's not going to be the standard. I might do it again in the future, but for now, we're going to do things as we traditionally do. Now, we're going to start with the pop-up parades, of course, but this time around, I kind of want to talk about them all as a group. I don't know if this happened last month or if this is like a new thing. I feel like I haven't heard anybody talk about it, but Good Smile Company is seemingly changing just like, the pricing of these figures, and not really for the better, and they're also making it more confusing in my opinion. Something that's very easy to notice though is that there's no 4,800 yen pop-up parade. All of them are at least 5,500 yen. We have A2 here, which I think is a pretty good pop-up parade, a very wide, just like pose for a pop-up parade, might be a bit of a shelf hog, but she kind of stands out. It's a little bit atypical, and I do think they did a good job with her. The sword looks cool, the face very like thick, full lips, which makes her face look a little bit prettier. The dirt on the thighs and the shoulders, right? I think it's pretty good. We also had the Nonami Mischievous Straight version for 5,500 yen. Very cheery, happy figure in this idol-inspired outfit. Also Dorothy from Fire Emblem Three Houses, looking pretty dang accurate, especially like for this price point. But then we get to Rita from Kindergarten Wars, and this one does not really feel like a 5,500 yen pop-up parade. Now I know the difference is only about 700 yen, but usually when they bumped up the price, there was a bit of a justification as to why that was happening. However, things are going to get a little confusing here, because next up we have an SP pop-up parade of Suisei from Hololive. Now, if you keep up with this line, the SP pop-up parades, which I think stands for special, are typically reserved for the large variants of pop-up parades, where they need to ask for a little bit more money, because the design is a little bit more complex than the typical pop-up parade L. However, this isn't a bigger pop-up parade, this is the normal size, but they're still calling it an SP. So there goes the classification right out the window. It means special, but now there's going to be small special pop-ups as well as large special pop-ups, and reading that it's a pop-up parade SP isn't enough information anymore. I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot by telling us that these pop-up parades would always be like a certain price point, because now they're realizing that they can't produce them at that price point anymore. But it's just going to make things very confusing for the consumer. Next up, we had a pop-up parade of Byakuya from Bleach, 6,800 yen. He's a little taller, but I think it's just because he's a big guy. Like this is gonna be scaled more so with the smaller pop-up parades. Also, it's cool to get a figure of him in the pop-up parade line. Somebody else making Bleach figures besides Mega House. But yeah, I don't really see anything about this that really stands out as special. Next up, we had a special pop-up parade of Satsuki. Now this one is a larger size pop-up parade, 9,800 yen, so they're only increasing it by a little bit from the typical 8,800 yen, but you can see down here her scaling is more in line with the large size variants. And this one originally was a pop-up parade L, but they changed it to an SP so that they could ask for a little bit more money. And hey, in this instance, I don't really have a problem with that. I think this is a great looking Satsuki figure in a very iconic pose. Colors are accurate, even if you're not gonna get that much shading. Her face looks very on point. And frankly, this is just a very cool setup. And the Ryuko figure from Good Smile Company, the pop-up parade, is like one of my favorite pop-up parades I've seen in person, that I personally own at least. So I know this one is also going to be very good. But yeah, SP at this point really just means we need more money. Jumping over to Champion Victor from League of Legends, or I guess Arcane, because I think this is the redesign, right? 7,500 yen, which means he's going to be a smaller pop-up parade. Maybe the way you do it now is just like, if it's under 8,800 yen, it's a small pop-up parade. I don't think we're going to see a large pop-up parade for cheaper than 8,800 yen. Still a pretty cool looking figure though, very dark palette, very slender proportions, all the gold accents. The mask is really sick looking to me. That weird grabby hand in the back. There is also a pop-up parade SP of Arsene from Persona 5, where they have him lifted in the air by like 3 supports, which isn't going to look that great, especially when you know that the base, like the disc, is going to be just, a basic black, maybe a little translucent with absolutely no design on it, so everything below him is just going to look kind of drab. But I do think the sculpting of this guy actually does look pretty good for this price point, and he actually is of a larger size. He's almost 300 millimeters, though that is because he's lifted in the air and he's got a very, very tall hat. And to alleviate a little bit of the stand issue, if you have another figure, specifically of Joker, you can just place Joker right in front of it and then hide some of the stands, right? It's not the most elegant solution, but it's certainly a solution that'll make your shelves look a lot better. Now, I definitely went very out of order here, so I'm wondering if there's anything left I need to talk about. Actually, I skipped over all of the large-size pop-up parades. Surprisingly, we're actually getting a Morgana figure, also from Persona 5, of course, though specifically from Persona 5 Tacticia. Now, that matters because they actually gave him a base. No pop-up parade gets a base like this. Crazy that they reserved it for Morgana. But I think the reason they did is because he's such a small little guy, so sculpting and painting a figure of just Morgana really wouldn't add up to 8,800 yen. So they put those extra funds and just man hours into the base, just doing something a little bit more special for the series. And I quite like it. More pop-up parades should do this. In fact, I think SP pop-up parades should have a special base. That's what they should do to make the distinction at this point. And that's like the #1 complaint about pop-up parades is the lackluster bases. I think they've stylized Morgana a little bit differently, like with the eyes. I think it's pretty apparent. But maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm not the biggest Morgana fan. He bullies Ryuji too much. Can't support him. We also had a pop-up parade of Elsa from ReZero. I think I said this last time, but this looks so much better than the scale figure that some company made of her. Might have been like Helios or something. I might be getting that wrong. But I like that she's got her weapons. I think her face is very pretty. All her charming, alluring points in her body, very accounted for. And the colors are great too. We have a pop-up parade of Sora from Yosuga no Sora. Of course, character has a million figures at this point, but hey, this one's pretty cheap. Comes with the rabbit plushie, which makes it very cute. Otherwise, nothing too noteworthy about this one. And then we also had a large-size pop-up parade of Grace from a series I don't know. Bureaucrat to Villainous. I really like her eyebrows. They're really thick. Plus, she has drill hair, and I like drill hair too. Though the sculpting leaves a little bit to be desired. I don't like how they're filling in the gaps with yellow plastic. Just doesn't make the hair look as nice as it could. But, it's a cheaper figure. I totally understand. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, but we also had this Zod bust figure from Berserk. I believe Max Factory is making this one. And just like the Guts bust figure from them, this is a repurposing of the pop-up parade that they've done and released already. So just from the torso up, but then they added some smoke trails, and the base is a bit cooler this time with the broken building under him. Here is the original release, and I'm now just realizing they changed his mouth to be closed on the bust figure rather than open. And I do think the, intensity, how fierce he looks on the original release is a little bit more appealing to me, though that doesn't really matter for your opinion of the figure. I'm just throwing out mine. It does seem like they've also changed one of his arms to be more open. I guess they changed more about this than I realized, but this is still, for the most part, the same sculpt, just with tweaks here and there. Next up, I would like to talk about these figures. Here we have the Bocchi the Rock, Nijika, Ikuyo, and Ryo chibi figures, 3,800 yen. They're stylized in a way that makes them look like they're kind of drawn with crayon in certain areas of the figures at least, like their eyes and parts of the instruments. Now you might be noticing that Nijika doesn't have a drum set. Originally she was supposed to come with one, but now the way they're doing it, and they're not showing it here so I'll add a photo in post, is that they're just giving you this little sheet, of acrylic or plastic, and it has the drum set on it, which is so disappointing because I really like these figures and I will still be buying them, but to show us something and then strip it away from us, it just is such a letdown, especially when Nijika's probably my favorite of the band members. Maybe, tied with Bochi or Hitori, but, I just feel kind of like lied to. Like, I don't know why they had to do that. If 3,800 yen was too cheap for the drum set, then they should have just made her cost a little bit more money. But now I just have to put this stupid plastic piece in front of her, and it's gonna look so bad compared to all of the other figures. And I guess while we're talking about Aniplex, we might as well talk about these two next. Here are the Takina and Chisato birthday illustration figures, non-scale, for 6,800 yen each. Now, I'm not really liking the execution on these two. Very cute concepts. The flower crowns, very pretty, and the dresses look pretty decent at this price point. However, there's like a slight uncanniness to their expressions, their eyes, their mouths. I get what they're going for, as if they were smiling so happily at somebody, probably each other, right? But I don't think they really pulled it off. The slightly squinted eyes, just not really working for these two. And in doing a little bit of research, I remembered that they actually looked a little bit differently in the announcement arts, which I don't know why they changed. I feel like these would have looked a little bit better. Maybe they felt like having their eyes open would just make the sculpts overall prettier, but since they didn't really pull it off, at least in my opinion, I don't think this was the right choice. It just doesn't really look like either of them, and that kind of bums me out. Anyway, the last budget figure on Good Smile Company's page is this Bunny Girls limited color version. For 8,800 yen, you can get this rather simple looking bunny girl. Very big, curvy ears, which I kind of like actually. And then her garter belts being carrots and heart themed is honestly a pretty dang good touch for a bunny figure. This one is being made by Fancam and is also a 1/7 scale, 340 millimeters. So good sizing for that price. Hopefully delivers on the quality. But that's it for Good Smile Company. Just a few extra figures on AmiAmi's page as far as the budget section goes. We had another Elena figure, the school uniform version, for about 10,000 yen with the book and the pen, the feather pen might I add. Very happy to be in school. Outfit looks very cute on her as well. We also had a figure of Nachoneko for, again, 10,400 yen, seemingly in her like lounging at home clothing. Posing shows off her tail as well as a little bit of her tush. And I believe she's actually getting another figure from maybe Kotobukiya. We'll see that in a few minutes if I'm correct. But we also had these two figures from El Coco. The ReZero Ram and Rem Cream Soda versions, 1/7 scales, 4,400 yen. Fantastic ideas. I do feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity to not change the color of the soda for Ram. Like, why not make that reddish pink? Why do they both have to be blue? And then our last budget figure, I believe, is this one. We have Momo from Dandadan by Bandai Spirit. So this is a Figure Art Zero, which I don't really talk about too much. Let me know if you guys collect this stuff. But I thought this one was interesting because we just saw a figure like this from Furyu. It's like the exact same concept, except I think Bandai did a much better job with their prototype. I'm going to assume that the Furyu version will have better quality, because we're comparing a 9,000 yen figure to like a 22,000 yen one, and usually the Figure Art Zero figures do have a little bit of quality control issues, but for half the price you're getting an expression that's so much livelier, and they actually did something with the base here. I'm not sure about the exact location, like the stone that's being broken underneath the hand, but on the Furyu figure, it's just a black disc. So this is already like way better. Really the only issue I have with this figure right now is that you could see a pretty obvious seam line in the middle of the hand. It would have been really smart though if they just adjusted where the seam line began, like if they put it more behind Momo so you wouldn't see it from the front, but it's kind of right there. So it does suck a little bit, but I do think the composition and the sculpting and just like the expressiveness is a lot better here than the Furyu version. So, Kotobukiya, let's talk about them next. We got 3 re-releases from them this month. Eyes Wallenstein for 17,600 yen, from Danmachi of course, as well as the My Little Pony Applejack and Sunset Shimmer Bishoujo statues. don't believe any of these actually include any bonus faceplate, so you don't have to worry about that. That has been a big thorn in my side this month, but we'll get there in a second. We also had Tororo Nekomugi, which I've mistaken for Nacho Neko earlier. But she is going to cost you about 22,000 yen, maybe discounted on AmiAmi considering this is with the tax, though it does say exclusive here, so maybe I'm wrong. Either way, another figure that doesn't actually include a bonus faceplate, so I guess you don't have to worry about that here either, though this one is pretty cute if we can get the photos loaded. I do like her outfit, very modest, the little like anklets are pretty cute, her shoes which kind of look like I guess shoes you would wear while wearing a Chinese dress. I don't know what they're specifically called. Her jacket with like the floral pattern. It even seems like there's a pattern in the sleeves, though it's a little hard for me to see with like the light back there just on my face, so it's giving me a little bit of glare. Also, I didn't realize this girl had fangs. Pretty like subtly sculpted because you can't really see them in a lot of the other photos. Jumping over to Elaine from the Kousaka series, this girl seems pretty popular from what I've gathered. Seems like a lot of people are pretty excited about this one, and I don't blame them. The stance is great, and she looks pretty badass too. This one does come with a bonus faceplate where she's smiling, and she looks rather pretty while doing so. But to me personally, I feel like figures that look like this are a dime a dozen, whereas it's a little less common to get a figure of a female character with a more serious, like stern expression, which is why I definitely prefer how things are set up by default. But yeah, she looks great. I think all of the Kousaka series figures have turned out pretty damn good, and I'm actually kind of surprised that this one doesn't cost more. Not that it's like the most complex design I've seen, but just based on her outfit and the shading and the weapon, and her hair is, you know, decently voluminous as well as braided, which might be a little bit easier to see from the back if I could find a photo of it right there. Looks pretty good. But yeah, paint looks great, sculpting looks great, price tag pretty dang reasonable. Next up we have Durga 1, or the first, not really sure, from the Frame Arms Girl line, again for 22,000 yen. This girl's like whole butt is just completely out there. I guess she's wearing some kind of like negligee inspired outfit, I'm not really sure, but it's very skimpy and is very revealing, leaves very little to the imagination. I'm not sure if this is a design of the thigh highs, but I think they're supposed to be like ripped. I think there was another photo somewhere on the other leg where it's clearly ripped as well, and considering they're in different spots, I'm gonna say it's battle damage. But on top of all of that, she's got this big ass lance that she's leaning on, which is pretty cool. I think it's painted really well. And I know she has a bonus faceplate, if we could find the photo of it. Seems like there's some metallic red on these, I guess, spiky bits on the lance, which just makes it look better. What is this saying? You could take off the skirt. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a plus 18 thing, but that's getting dangerously close to being so. I think it's the next photo. This one, here we go. We have this like very lovey-dovey expression, very cute smile. Frankly, I don't know which one's better. I do feel like the slightly worried faceplate, because of like the battle damage and whatnot, feels a little bit more fitting, but frankly I think both are very charming in their own way. But yeah, this figure is pretty lewd for Kotobukiya standards, though they're definitely leaning more into this nowadays. But enough about her, let's jump over to Shenko, or Lele if you know her by that name. 25,300 yen. This is a pretty expensive Kotobukiya figure. I did expect this one to be somewhat pricey, though it does still kind of hurt to see that price point. And honestly, it has not been easy for me to find this bonus faceplate. There's like one shop, I think it's Nin Nin Games, and they want 30,000 yen for it, which is a lot. And when a lot of stores are saying that this is going to cost a lot to ship, I'm actually thinking of just not going for this anymore, considering the state of America right now and how things are gonna get pretty damn expensive soon, and I ain't getting into all of that right now. But I'm just saying, thinking in the future, I'm probably going to want to save money on this hobby wherever possible. So I think I'm just going to make the hard decision to not worry about this anymore and just go for the default version, save a bunch of money in the process, and then never think about that bonus faceplate ever again. I really do like it. Just makes it feel a little bit more dynamic with that shouting faceplate. But yeah, it just makes me so happy to finally have a figure of Shenko in production that will soon be on my shelves, because I just really never thought this would be possible. And it's even more exciting in my opinion because they didn't have to give her the claws. They could have like cut some corners and a lot of money would have been saved if they didn't use the claws. but they're so like essential to her look and how she fights, and I'm really glad that Kotobukiya went the extra mile to make sure that they were there. Now, we did see at the Kotobukiya collection that you will need to support the arm that's like kind of dangling in the air, which is understandable. That thing looks pretty damn massive just floating in the air behind her. But besides that, I think the posing is perfect. The clothing is so wrinkly, and her arm looks pretty toned. Not the most muscular arm you've ever seen on a figure, but I do like that it's not just like a noodly thin arm, right? She's a fighter, and I like that that's demonstrated here. Let's just get another photo of her face if possible, because she's got a very cute face in my opinion, and I like the blush stickers, very important, very integral to the way she looks. I could definitely admit that portions of her outfit, specifically the pink, doesn't look that shaded. It looks pretty flat across the board. Even her hair could use a little bit of like gradation or just like some extra, purple or blue hues just to mix things up. A little bit more nuance of a paint job would have been nice. But they're keeping just, the paint pretty simplistic, subtle shading when like applicable or needed, but it does leave like a little bit to be desired. Frankly though, it doesn't matter that much to me or anybody who's a big fan of this character, because this really is one of those dream come true figures. So like, we're not gonna sleep on this. We're just gonna buy it and we're gonna be happy about it. And Kotobukiya is a very solid company. I'm not worried about this or anything, but yeah, I do wish the faceplate wasn't the hardest thing to get and also wouldn't cost me like $80 extra. It is such a bummer that I'm not going to have that bonus faceplate, but I'm not going to let it get me down. Just going to enjoy what I can get and save a lot of money while doing so. And then last up for Kotobukiya was actually Scarlet from Unicorn Overlord for 23,100 yen. I really like seeing the artwork that this figure is based on, like side by side, because it really shows you that they did a great job matching that art style. And from the figures from Unicorn Overlord that we've seen from Kotobukiya, this is the one that impresses me the most. I prefer all of the other characters they're making over Scarlet, even though I like Scarlet too. But there's just something about the sculpting and the paint apps, the shading on her dress, and like the bronze gauntlets and the swords around the dress, right? There's just something about this that looks a little bit higher quality than the other figures. Though granted, not all of them are painted yet, but I don't know. It looks fantastic to me. Maybe it's because they're using like metallic paint. Her boots are very glossy. Her eyes are very pretty here with the drill hair on top of that. I don't know, even like the white portions have some good shading on it. Now, her bonus faceplate, I believe she's just happier than on the default expression, which I feel like isn't, something you gotta go out of your way for, but it is cute. Her normal faceplate is cute though. It's not a big deal, which I wish that's how it was for Shenko, but I really feel like I'm missing out on something there. But yeah, they're definitely killing it here. Just show you a few more photos before we jump over to Mega House, I think. Which I guess will start with this one, a re-release of Domon from G Gundam Classic Show. Everybody's seen it, I think. He's gonna cost you about 21,000 yen. It was weird that they went with Master Asia first and then finally now are re-releasing Domon, but better late than never, I suppose. The only thing I'll say is that he's a little annoying to put together. The sword just like doesn't really fit in his hand. And I know from experience because it took me quite a while to actually assemble this guy and put him in the living room. We also had a re-release of Roy and Riza from Full Metal Alchemist, 30,800 yen, because you gotta buy both of them. Couldn't tell you what like the original price of this figure was, but it's definitely marked up because like every Mega House re-release is always a bit more expensive than the previous release. So here's a figure of Crow, Loki version, or Akechi from Persona 5 Royal, the Showtime edition. Did somebody say pancakes? This guy's gonna cost you 24,000 yen. And this is actually a kind of interesting release. It's technically a re-release, but they're making it a little bit different because of the base, which is actually right down here. You can combine him with Joker, and then you have it where they're doing their like combo attack, which is pretty cool. But unless I'm wrong, I remember seeing these guys at One Hobby, or it was One Fest, one of the two, and they had like this background piece as well. And I don't know if that's just like Joker's base kind of tilted behind him, but it looked pretty damn slick. But yeah, if you already have the original releases of these two, then this probably isn't going to be worth it, but it's an incentive if you missed them the first time to go for the newer release. And that definitely has like its pros or cons, because like, you know, the people who bought in early now are missing out on something, and that kind of like rubs you the wrong way. Certainly would if I bought these two. Like, I would be kind of mad about that, frankly, but it just makes the figures better, so it's hard to really complain about it at the end of the day. Next up, though, we had a new Hell's Paradise figure of Gabimaru and Yamada Asaimon Sagiri for about 35,000 yen. I don't believe you can buy these two individually. This is just how it's set up. Now, I would say that's a pretty decent price for two figures, except for the fact that they're pretty damn small. 200 millimeters in height? Like, that's pretty tiny. At this price, they either needed to be a little bit bigger or have something with the base that's like the setting of the show, or maybe like some wind effects or just like some special effects around them. That would have definitely made this more worth it. But as it stands, it's fine, but it's kind of missing that like special sauce to really get you excited. And then last up for Mega House was a Yu-Gi-Oh figure of the Silent Magician for about 33,000 yen. 260 millimeters in height is a little bit more respectable, but that's still a pretty damn hefty price tag for one figure. Thankfully, it's gorgeous, and like, this is a great showing from them, in my opinion. All that like silver hair, very like beautifully flowing behind her, that like scrunched, wrinkly ass hat up top. Her dress has a really nice luster to it as it drapes down towards the base, showing off them legs. Her scepter looks awesome as well. That combination of silver and metallic blue paint, it's perfect. And if we could find it, her eyes are so like sparkly, as if like the stars are inside them. It looks gorgeous. Frankly, she is just very, very pretty, and I'm loving the execution here. If this was a little bit cheaper, I would probably buy it. It's a little too expensive for me to impulse buy this. I'm definitely like in the market for more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, but I never had this card, so I don't have any attachment to it. But I do think this is a great figure from Mega House. Very impressed. I love this one. Relatively small month for freeing this time around, but we did have like 3 bare leg figures from them, including Karumi and White Queen from Data Bullet, as well as Nyaruko-san, which is such a throwback. Not the oldest figure or character out there, but like, this figure's gotta be around a decade old or something. At least the show was, because I picked up her Nendo when I went to Japan in 2012. Like, I don't know when this figure originally released, but like, I've not thought about this show or this character in so goddamn long. We also, though, had a 1/6 scale of Noko Shikanoko from my dear friend Noko-tan, 20,000 yen. Relatively simple figure, looks okay in my opinion. I never really got the hype of this show, I never really tried it, but it looks kind of cute. I get what they're going for. The shading on the hair looks pretty decent, and I do like the shape of her mouth. It looks maybe slightly off somehow, but you know, since I'm not like into the show or series in any way, I don't know if this is like faithfully capturing the character. You guys let me know. They got like the pose down though, so at least they got that going for it. And at least it's not that expensive, right? But what is pretty expensive is the re-release of the Demon Lord Mara from Shin Megami Tensei for 50,000 yen. And that is a penis monster, which is fucking cool. I don't know what to tell you. I'm pretty sure this is not a 1/4 scale. In fact, I don't think there is a scaling on this page, but it is 40 centimeters long of Mara on his like little chariot wagon with the knives and the swords on the front. It's creepy, it's gross, it's fucking cool. They should do more stuff like this. It's weird that this is like the only demon they ever made, I think. Maybe I'm wrong there, but like, you don't see stuff like this very often, especially from freeing. So yeah, if you want to pick them up, you now can, for 50,000 yen. And then our last figure from freeing was actually from Bunny Garden, a 1/4 scale of Miyuka for 36,000 yen. It's nice to see another character outside of Rin actually getting a figure. And I gotta say, I feel like they've done a pretty good job with this one. This is another series, though, where I don't really have familiarity with the character, so maybe like her eyes look a little off or something. But I like the execution here. I'm sure they're just borrowing her outfit from the game for this figure, which is fine. That's what people would want. But the blue on this figure looks really rich to me. And I like her gray highlights, or maybe it's just like the gradation for the tips of her hair. It's a little subtle, you can only really see it from the back, but it's appreciated nonetheless. And I do think she's got a very pretty face. Those eyes are stellar. So good job. Hopefully it's worth it. But knowing freeing, it probably won't be. Not to be a hater, but you know how it is with freeing sometimes. But yeah, that's going to do it for them. We're going to jump over to first 4 figures with the Metroid Prime Samus Phazon suit, PVC version for about 150 bucks, though technically it's a little bit more, but this is the discounted price right now. I'm going to try to remember to talk about this company a little bit more as long as they're making something that I'm interested in, or I think a lot of people would be, but it's Samus. Of course I'm going to mention this one, though I didn't mention the previous version, the Gravity suit, because I wasn't really that impressed with it. I'm not really the biggest fan of the suit either, but the Phazon suit, the black and silver, is so sleek on Samus, and then you have like the orange lighting throughout her body. Though technically that would only happen if you bought the exclusive version, but that is the only difference between the normal and exclusive version. There's not like extra parts. As you could see, the arm cannon is translucent blue this time around, and probably will light up in some way as well if I had to guess. Really nothing to talk about though, because this is literally like the exact same design and mostly sculpting that the other Samus figure had. They're just repainting it and then like moving the arms around a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, this might as well be the same sculpt. So if you've seen that one, which I did review, then you pretty much know what you're in for. Though in that video I did have a little bit of nitpicks and issues with mine, so hopefully that's not present on this version of Samus. Gonna talk about Prime 1 Studios very quickly as well. This is another company I want to kind of continue to remember to bring up in these videos, even if only for a couple of minutes. I just think their statues and figures are at least noteworthy, and I should bring them up more often. So yeah, we have this Siesta figure, the wedding bikini version. Also, I gotta stop saying figure. This is a life-sized statue for $8,000. This is like the strangest decision I've seen from them, because I have to wonder literally who is asking for this. I'm not saying the show's bad. I'm not saying the character's bad. But this is such a bizarre choice for them to make a life-size statue for. Maybe they were just contracted to do so, I don't know. But as you can see in these photos, most of her clothing is actually fabric. I think the only plastic pieces of her outfit would be the bikini, like the top and the bottom, so that this wouldn't be a plus 18 thing. Because at the life size, that would be a little ridiculous. But you know, if you really like this character, you could buy a life-size version of her. We also had the Ram Glass Edition for $190. I don't know what the conversion rate is now that I think about it, but that's probably around the 27,000 yen range if I had to guess. But yeah, we've seen this concept from them a few times at this point, all from ReZero, I'm pretty sure. Not sure if they're ever going to expand this line to other franchises, but we have Rem, Echidna, maybe Amelia, I feel like she got one. And now, as you can see, we have Ram finally getting her figure as well. Swappable faceplates is a nice bonus, though that is the bonus version you have to remember to buy, which I'm not sure if that's exclusive to the Prime 1 Studios store. I really do like this concept. I like that you actually get a real glass with these figures, and they put like that little fluffy material on the inside so you don't scratch them up or anything. But they do seem kind of void of shading. They look very flat in terms of the paint. Like the white might have this really pretty pattern on it, but it really is just like white and that's it. Same goes for the pink of her dress and her hair. They're going for translucent plastic, so I wouldn't really expect any like shifting colors or tones in her hair, which I think is a little bit of a disappointment. But yeah, I don't know. Definitely not like Ram's worst figure or anything. I kind of like it, but it's probably not going to be worth the money because it doesn't really seem like the paint part of the figure is there. I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but it seems like Good Smell Company's global store page had a bit of a rework to it. Nothing drastic, but now we don't have to scroll so far down to get to the information of the figure, which I definitely appreciate. Though I do wish they would do one more thing and take the manufacturer and put it right up here. Like specifically the logo of the company would be really nice. But either or, just so I don't always have to like go down there to find out who actually made some of these figures. But yeah, we're looking at Clockwork now. Fairly new company from what I can gather. We actually got 2 figures from them this month, including the Priestess bikini armor version for about 27,000 yen from Goblin Slayer. A cute idea. Very embarrassed to be wearing this armor, but like, I don't know if it's just me, this doesn't really look like her. I also think this is a lot of money to ask for what is a relatively simple figure. The plating does look nice, but like, 27,000 yen for this? I don't know about that. Though we also have a figure of Minnow swimsuit version, again, for about 27,000 yen. And frankly, I think this is even worse of a deal. She looks very okay. The best thing is probably this like skirt piece with the very large flowers decorating it. The sculpting's pretty clean, the shading, like that nice blue airbrushing on top of the white flowers, looks great. I like that a lot. But everything else about this figure's okay. Her face isn't really doing much for me. Expression's just a very basic smile. The hair has like some decent shading to it. The bikini outside of that one skirt piece, pretty flat across the board. I think this would be fine if it was way cheaper, but again, 27,000 yen is way too much to ask, in my opinion, for a swimsuit figure, especially where like the only real highlight is one portion of the skirt, or like the cloth around her waist. And you know we can't talk about overpriced figures without mentioning DMM Factory. Here is the Toshishita Kanajo illustration by Amagasa Yoon. So we have a 28,600 yen cat girl figure. I'm going to guess this is a 1/6 scale. Yes, she is. A little bit, you know, lewd because they're showing off some side boob, a lot of emphasis on the thighs and whatnot. Little peek at the panties, you could see it through the dress that she's wearing. Maybe a little busy because of the white highlights as well as like the blue gradation in the back of her hair. Not gonna be for everybody. I wouldn't even say this is really for me. I don't think the sculpting or like the design or the paint is bad at all here, but I mean, 28,000 yen? That's ridiculous. I will say though, I think it's a nice touch that her hair is actually draping over the cattail. This photo demonstrates it a little bit better and also demonstrates that her cheeks are kind of poking out of the dress. Very fan servicey, this one. This one kind of came out of nowhere. Here's the Prince Eugen Kindred Evening Spirits version for, again, about 28,000 yen, made by Pony Canyon. All of their figures are pretty damn expensive, so I'm not surprised to see that this one is following suit. I'm sure you guys are familiar with her if you play Azur Lane, or maybe even if you don't, because there's that like really popular altar figure. I think she also has a Race Queen figure from Apex, I believe. Both of which I would say I like a lot more than the figure that we're looking at here. But the entire look and design of this figure is drastically different. A completely different outfit. Her hair is like not styled the same way. I think she's holding a wine glass. It seems like that's the case. I'm sure we could see that in some other photos, hopefully. Yeah, it's definitely back there. I'm so used to these Azur Lane girls being so thick that her legs being like pretty, you know, normal is throwing me off really hard. I don't know if this is more accurate or the other figures are more accurate, but I guess you guys can fill me in if you're familiar with her. And I guess last note before we move on, mole on the chest. That's an A+ right there. Anyway, let's jump over to some proof figures from Atelier Ryza. So 24,000 yen for either Claudia or Lila, both hanging out at the beach, doing their own thing. Swimsuits are pretty different from each other, though the way they've designed the bases is pretty similar. Lila's is much bigger, and she's kind of leaning on this big-ass rock in the back, though both of them are surrounded by like seashells and stuff. And in Claudia's case, she's actually like kicking the water and splashing around, which I think makes it a little bit more fun. And overall, I do like Claudia's figure a little bit more, though I feel like her face looks totally off, at least like from the version of her I'm familiar with. Really love her swimsuit though, really like that inflatable rings design. Like if her face was more reminiscent of the game's like promotional art, I'm sure you're familiar with some of it, then I think this figure would be a banger, but it's slightly missing the mark for me because it doesn't really remind me of her that much. And Lila, I don't really love the colors of this figure, specifically her swimsuit, even if they're fitting, so I just don't really find this figure that appealing. But on the flip side, I don't have as much issues with her face, so I guess that's a plus. And I do like her hair. I think the way it's like kind of flowing around and just tied up looks pretty good here. Alright, we're going to talk about Clay now next. They had quite a bit to show, including Tatsu-chan for about 26,000 yen. This one disappoints me greatly, because while I love how she looks, originally she was supposed to come with this big tree that acted as her base, and for some reason they took it away last minute, and now we have this black dish with a support rod going like up into the tail. I can only imagine it's because they wanted to cut costs, and they probably weren't confident this would sell that much. even though they got the man Tori Domino to design it. And like, he's pretty damn popular. I would certainly line up for most of his figures. In fact, I do, and I really wanted this one, but out of the principle of them kind of just like fumbling it last second, I kind of just want to see if it bins, which is not what I was planning. I was going to pre-order this immediately. I honestly don't think her price is that bad at all, considering the complexity of like her design, the outfit that she's wearing, the katana she's wielding. She's got a dragon tail, she's got the horns, her hair is pretty voluminous, wearing a fundoshi, that's pretty sexy, showing off a lot of her body, thighs, of course going to be super thick because of the artist. A lot of gold trim and pattern work. Those accents are just super pretty on like the rest of the palette. And you know I'm a sucker for some fangs, even though that has nothing to do with the price. But I don't know, these photos are pretty convincing. But I do feel like I need to stand my ground here and just hope that it drops in price. We have the Kill la Kill 1/7 scale figure of Ryuko and Mako, and Guts as well, for about 80,000 yen. Now I think most people expected this figure to cost a pretty penny, though I don't think anybody was really prepared for this price tag. Aniplex makes some decent scales. I don't think they make anything that's worth this much money though. They're a very like B to like high C plus in my opinion in terms of like what they produce. It's just kind of nice to see Ryuko and Mako so close to each other, such good friends. The friendship will last forever. You got Guts sleeping inside of the battle mech that the Nudist Beach organization uses. A fun little feature, or I guess addition, is that you get Mako's jacket, which you could place on or take off if you want. I mean, if I'm paying this much money, that jacket's staying on. But one thing that's a huge shame, if you're not familiar with the art that this figure is based on, it's supposed to be plastered with stickers, and they're nowhere to be found on this figure. I've read in numerous places that you're supposedly going to be getting like a sticker pack with this figure, and you place them on yourself, which is a huge pain in the ass. You should not have to do that for something that's this much money. This isn't a $20 Gunpla. I mean, not only should you not have to do it, but you are not going to be able to do it as nicely as a company that's like paid to do this stuff will do. So your version of the figure might have a couple of spots that look a little spotty, you know, because like the sticker got a little crinkled in one area and you might have ruined it. It's like, uh-oh, I really bit the big one here, and then you're kind of screwed because I don't know where else you're going to get those stickers. I hate to say it, but I'm also really like not that impressed with the sculpting and paint of Ryuko or Mako. They look fine, but again, not for something this expensive. And I know it all adds up. 2 characters, a dog, and a whole battle mech. Like, that's gonna cost a decent amount of money no matter what, but I don't know, like, why is Mako's hair so dark? I feel like the art style also looks like slightly off too, only a little bit. Still looks like Kill la Kill, of course, but we'll stop complaining about that one and I guess jump over to a new figure of Kaori from Your Lie in April for 19,800 yen. Which, you know, depicts her from that one scene where she's playing the song, of course, with the violin, the very simplistic, like, light pink dress that she's wearing, with a real happy and cute expression to boot. I believe they're painting her dress in a nice, like, pearlescent pink paint, which should look pretty good on the final product, and the violin looks great. If there's any nitpicks here, I feel like her face could look a little bit more accurate to just, like, you know, the series overall. I'm kind of thrown off looking at this bonus down here, the Shikishi board, because I like the art a lot here, and then you look back at the figure and it kind of comes across as a bit more generic, which is a bit of a shame, because in a bubble, this figure's fine, and the price isn't that bad either. But if I could admit something to you guys, I only watched like a few episodes of this, so not really the figure for me. Either way, let's keep going. We have a figure of Hakui Kaori, 1/7 scale, 27,500 yen, a member of the Hololive team, getting this really elaborate figure, kind of chaotic in a sense because of all those beakers and vials down there, very colorful as well as a result. There's like a bunch of floating monitors behind her too. It's a pretty cool figure, and there's like a little creature behind her. I think she's supposed to be a wolf girl, so maybe that's like a little cute wolf. That would certainly make a lot of sense to me, but yeah, Kleino kind of kills it when it comes to these Hololive figures. This looks insanely good. Even these hexagon panels acting as like the backdrop of the figure look pretty dang good too, and thematically fit alongside with everything else. The way they've painted her hair and the tail are definitely like a big highlight for me. The shading is excellent, and like the slight gradation into darker tones. Very, very well done. Of course, she's got a very cute face, very playful, just like pose and expression. I would also say there's a nice sense of movement here because of her hair, the coat and the skirt kind of flowing about. Very frilly design too. It's all really dang cute. The colors are fantastic. And it feels like they packed in as much as they possibly could before, like, you know, going overboard, just to make like the ultimate figure of Koyori, like a love letter to her. So yeah, I feel like every time I see a Claynel Hololive figure, I'm always impressed. I know they're making a polka, and I feel like that's going to be insanely nice whenever they get around to it. But yeah, another great showing from the company. I believe this is our last Claynel figure, a new Uma Musume figure of Meijiro Ardain, signature racewear version, for about 25,000 yen, which really illustrates the horse girl tax. This should not be only 2,000 yen less than the previous figure. That's insane to me. It's the same company too. Just goes to show you the license for this series is nuts. But I mean, she's very pretty. I like the palette here. There's not like that much to talk about. If you like her, you'll like this figure because Claynel usually delivers, but it's pretty simplistic at the end of the day. However, there is a Fat Company Uma Musume figure that I'm a pretty big fan of. Again, really expensive, almost 27,000 yen for a figure of Shebel Grand. Now, I'm not going to go near this because of the price tag, but I love this design. Her outfit and her hairstyle and her eyes are all so appealing to me. It seems like you could actually like have her tip in the hat a little bit, which is pretty cute. And it does beg the question, does this hat fit over the ears or do the ears plug in afterwards? I want to know like what the answer is to that. Also, this is a separate faceplate where she's smiling a little bit more, but I like the normal faceplate. It just fits her vibe so much more. This starry cloak looks beautiful. It's very glossy, but just like the colors on top of that is amazing. I really, really like everything about this figure, except for the price point. So here's a figure of Anya Forger, detective version for 18,000 yen, made by Good Smile Arts Shanghai, and is a 1/7 scale at about 165 millimeters. Now, this shouldn't be a big figure, but I think this should also cost a little bit less because you're dealing with a very tiny character. And while they are putting some like fun references on the base and put her in this like pretty cute like Sherlock Holmes, you know, like detective outfit, I don't really see a lot of people wanting to spend almost 20,000 yen on this. It's a pretty decent conversion if you're in the US, but elsewhere it might be a little bit too much. I just think it's kind of proven at this point that people aren't really willing to spend a lot of money on this series, even if they really like it. It's just not drawing in figure collectors that spend like, you know, 30,000 yen on a single figure, or even 20,000 yen. It just doesn't seem like the right fit for some reason. I could be totally wrong though. This is a fun little setup. You got the bag of peanuts down there, super oishi apparently, the Chimera plushie, bunch of newspapers, a paw pad, maybe that's Bond's doing, and you do get a secondary faceplate where she's looking a little mischievous, though I am not the biggest fan of how this one was done. Next up, from Azur Lane is Takao, the Divine Exorcist Blade, for about 23,000 yen. This one seems like a killer deal, and is the rare instance of an Azur Lane figure having like a battle pose very dynamically set up. She's got electricity coursing through her body, or at least like her hand and the blade, which is sick. Also, if you couldn't tell, she's wearing pasties, which is an optional part. You don't need the pasties, which is kind of surprising to even give you that option. But I really shouldn't be surprised with an Azur Lane figure trying to be like as sexy as possible. I get it. Pasties are usually like a little out there though. But yeah, this one's kind of awesome, you know? I like this pose a lot. I like that she looks serious. I like the flow of her ponytail. I like how low to the ground she is. It's really different for an Azur Lane figure. You don't see stuff like this often, and I think for that reason, this one stands out. Now, do people who collect Azur Lane want something like this? I guess we'll find out. Next up, we have a pair of Goddess of Victory Nikkei figures, Noir and Blonde, White Rabbit and Black Rabbit, both for about 25,000 yen each. I think my literal first impression I had with this figure when I first saw it go up for pre-order was just like, god damn. I think I just said that out loud because of how massive her boobs are. I know this character has a very large chest, but they just looked a little bit bigger on the sculpt for some reason. Might be the lack of a bra, I don't know. or really like a lot of support just because of the kimono that she's wearing. Beats me. Very sexy though. As we continue to go through the gallery, we can see some other charm points, some alluring aspects of Noir, like her thick thighs and the fact that this dress does not really cover her butt at all. There is like a cute heart drawn on her thigh as well. I believe it's because of Blanc here. We could see her inking a heart in the air as well. I think this figure is painted so nicely. There's just something about this combination of colors that's really appealing to me, like the darker outfit in contrast with the really pale skin, and then all of that gold on top of that. It just works flawlessly in my opinion. And like the shading on her leggings and like the sheer material by the chest, that looks insanely impressive. Like I'm just in love with the way they painted her. Surprisingly, both of these figures have additional faceplates. I don't really see a huge difference between these two. Like you can't see it, the grin is different, but I would have expected something a little bit, you know, drastically changed, as we could see on the Noir figure, where she goes from this like blushing smile to this more flustered expression. I just like how this one is totally different from the last. Either way, really like these two. There's something a bit more like festive and luxurious about how they're designed, like outside of the kimonos and all of the gold. I think it's the way their hair is styled. I really like both of their like bun hair. They're tied up differently. We could see Blonde's hair back here. And to go back to that other photo, these boots, oh man, those boots look good on Noir. So this one is probably going to be the figure I talk about the most in this video, just because the situation around him is very interesting and kind of confusing at the same time, and I want to get more into it. So this is the Final Fantasy 15 Noctis figure, Square Enix owned, 30,000 yen, which is extremely expensive, though he is a 1 and 6.5 scale, which is a very strange scaling that we typically don't see, but he is a respectable height at 275 millimeters, which is definitely good. Now, a couple of weeks ago when we first saw Noctis for the first time alongside Lightning and Fran, it was a pretty big deal. Just seeing that Good Smile Company was actually collaborating with Square Enix and seemingly making figures for them. Because like many of us know, Square Enix manufactured figures, while they have like these really beloved characters that you would want figures for, the quality is never there. The Bring Arts line, full of issues, Play Arts, same thing. So to have a company like Good Smile Company with a much better track record making beloved characters like Noctis and Lightning is just one of those dream come true situations. But I don't really know who's actually making this figure anymore, because when you go down here, it says it's distributed by Good Smile Company and manufactured by Square Enix. Though when you go to the MFC page, it says literally the opposite, and I'm not sure where they're getting that information from, and I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying I don't know who's right. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense for Square Enix to manufacture this figure, because why would they collaborate with Good Smile Company then, if they were just going to do it themselves? What we can do, though, to get a little bit more insights on this figure and how it's being made, is look at the artists on board. So first up, let's take a look at the sculptor, Midorigi Tomoya, who, when we go to their page on MFC, you could see that they haven't actually released any, like, retail figure outside of the Noctis one that they're working on, though they have shown off a few of their garage kits, and if we go to their Twitter page, which we'll load in a second, we can see that they are definitely a big fan of From Software characters and just, like, dudes in armor and stuff like that. And just looking at any of their work, it's pretty damn impressive. It seems like they got a great sculptor on board to make Noctis. And we can keep going through this gallery, though it's not like that's important, but it does seem like they got a great person for the job. Now, if we jump back and we look at the color producer, Fukui Junichi, you might actually be pretty familiar with their work, because they've done a ton of stuff for Good Smile Company, as well as Max Factory, and some other companies as well. I'm sure you're familiar with the Reading Steiner Kurisu, or the Strawberry Miku, the Stella figure from the DF line. There's plenty. Sakura Miku, the Asuna Blue Archive figure, the Chun-Li, which is like a 10 out of 10 figure. So yeah, their resume is extremely impressive, and they have numerous examples of their work that you might actually own, which is a good sign. So the talent is clearly there to produce this figure of Noctis. Though it's not like there's only 2 people employed for this specific figure and they're gonna do it all themselves, there's a whole team, of course, right? And the factory where these figures are produced is really gonna be where like the quality control issues arise. So we can only hope that things are handled well on that front as well. But this figure looks fantastic in my opinion. I'm not a Noctis guy, I don't even really like this game that much, but they've done a stellar job with the details within this figure. And even if this was created by Square Enix in-house, this is still probably like the best Noctis has ever looked in figure form. Like, we're not gonna beat around the bush here. He's got a very pretty boy face, and it's very in line with Tetsuya Nomura's art style and just like how these characters are rendered in-game. Like, it's pretty spot on in my opinion. And what impresses me the most about this figure is probably his clothing. I'm really liking this rough looking texture on his jacket, the pants, the gloves of course, the engine blade is all like scratched and dull from use, which is really cool, and even like the meticulous sculpting of his fingernails. It just feels like they really care about every inch of this figure and want to bring out the most of just his design. And I guess what he brings to the Final Fantasy universe. Also, I do like the simplicity of the base. Like, they're not really doing too much down here. It's just semi-translucent blue with the name of the game on it, but it looks pretty classy and just feels like Final Fantasy to me. Also, now that I'm looking at these boots up close, I never realized they were differently designed. That's kind of cool. And the fact that they remembered that for this figure. I hope this figure is good. It would be such a shame if we finally got something like this and then it just turns out to be a dud, especially at 30,000 yen. That would actually be so insulting and very sad. But yeah, I want these to do good. I want them to make more characters, and I hope this lasts for a very long time, as long as they are of a very high quality. And then last up for Good Small Company was actually a figure of Tamaki Kousaka, the 20th anniversary version, for about 22,000 yen, and she is a 1/7 scale. Now, this series and this character are pretty damn popular. You might not know it if you've never heard of the franchise or this character before, but just look up her name on my figure collection and you will find numerous listings for figures because she has tons. This character has been around for a very long time and is beloved, and I think it's a great idea that Good Small Company decided to make another figure of her, because even if there are so many of them, a lot of them are pretty dang old at this point. But the series is celebrating its 20th anniversary. I believe they're remaking the first game as well. Not sure about the second. I've never played either of them. Maybe I will one day. I do like that they made a little special site for her, which pretty much replicates like a website from back in the day. I think it's pretty charming. And all these different links do send you to different places just to show off the figure in different ways, just some highlights talking about them. Really like this magazine cover. Just went full out for this franchise and this announcement. I kind of love it. But we'll go back to the main page now to look at Tamaki. You know, at the end of the day, this is a pretty simplistic figure, just because it's a girl in her school uniform carrying her bag. There's a very innocent spirit to her appearance and just overall posing as she's skipping along school with the bag between her legs, looking to you very lovingly so. And it really does feel like they're capturing the personality of Tamaki. Going through the photos gives you a better appreciation of like the paintwork going into this figure, the really nice pink and red tones mixing together. Love her eye decals, they're really pretty, really large too. And a little bit of fan service on the back showing a bit of her tush. Personally, I find this figure to be pretty delightful. There's nothing too complex about it, but the reds and the pinks really pop, and she just has an adorable presence to her. Maybe 22,000 yen is a little bit too much for a school uniform figure, but considering her legacy and considering how nice this figure is turning out, I don't really have an issue with it. So yeah, that's it for Good Small Company. Let's keep going. Alright, next up, let's talk about Hobby Sakura from the Goddess of Victory Nikkei series. Is a figure of Cinderella, a 1/4 scale, for about 50,000 yen. And she looks pretty damn massive, so she's going to be a single shipment. Now, there is a simpler version of this figure that doesn't include these big mechanical pieces that are surrounding her. Are they shields? Are they weapons? You fill me in. But it is nice that they let you buy into this figure for a little bit less, about 7,000 to 8,000 less. And we're seeing a lot of Nikkei 1/4 scales, and even like Azur Lane 1/4 scale figures, which is pretty cool, you know? And I'm liking that other companies outside of Freeing are actually making them. We need more competition when it comes to 1/4 scale figures, because there's tons of like statues and resins at that size, but PVC, it's really just like Freeing. And when there's more competition, it means these companies are going to have to try harder to get your money. So yeah, we're actually getting pretty elaborate 1/4 scale PVC figures, and I think that's pretty dang neat. Now, when it comes to this figure, I do think it's a little too big. You really need like a whole table for this figure. Plus, just the way like everything is being supported on this figure, some of these poles look pretty thin, and Cinderella is only on 1 foot. This all just seems like an accident waiting to happen, which would be a pretty expensive accident. But if we're not worrying about that, I do think Cinderella looks pretty fantastic. Though I do have to wonder why she is so glossy if like there is exposed skin outside of the suit, unless like her butt and legs are technically covered by something and it's supposed to be like a really shiny glossy material, but it doesn't look like that to me. I don't know anything about this character. So it just looks like she is drenched in oil or something, which, you know, obviously is going to look sexy in its own way, but I don't get it. Outside of that, she does have a fairly muted palette. It's primarily like white or gray, though that does make her eyes stand out that much more, which I really do like. She really is caked up though. That butt is impressive and kind of hard to not look at. But we're going to jump over to a figure of Toki, made by Alter. Now, there's actually 2 versions of this figure as well. I need to open the tab for that one. But as you can see, this is a very expensive figure at 36,000 yen. But we also have a 27,000 yen version, which includes a little bit less. And there's just so much here that I feel like I'm gonna forget something. But as you could see, we have Toki here in her maid outfit. You could take out the bottom portion of the dress and like make it a mini skirt instead. You can give her double peace signs. You could have her holding the briefcase. She's got her gun on her back. I'm not sure if she could hold that on this version. Maybe. She definitely can, as seen in this photo right here. I think that's the main stuff you get with this figure, quite a lot. She has a ton coming with her, and this is the normal version of the figure. But if we jump over to the deluxe set, you can see that she has this like swimsuit outfit. I think it's a swimsuit, and like a whole visor piece for her head. But yeah, you're essentially getting an entirely separate body, though it does beg the question if you can have both of these set up at the same time, or if they would even give you 2 bases to allow you to do that at all. I don't think they've been fully clear on how this specific release works, but I know a lot of people are pretty excited about this one, and I don't blame them. This is like the ultimate Toki figure if you do prefer Toki in the maid outfit, or I guess the swimsuit outfit, because you're getting 2. I do love the fact that even on the normal version of the figure, you can take off the bottom portion of the maid outfit and turn it into the mini skirt instead. They set it up in a very seamless way. You can't really tell that this had an optional piece attached to it previously, or that the longer dress version could even come off. But yeah, I'm really curious how all of these extra pieces work and how much you can mix and match and swap around. But yeah, you know, it's Alter. Everything about this figure in terms of like the sculpting and the painting seems pretty ace to me. Kind of surprised it doesn't seem like there's a secondary face though. Like, why wouldn't she have more faceplates if they're going to give you everything else? But maybe I'm just missing that. Either way, I think that was Alter's only figure, so I guess we'll jump over to this figure from Amakuni. Here we have Sarah for about 29,000 yen. Pretty damn expensive, though she is actually the rare cast-off figure from the company, which I'm not gonna show you, but you could use your imagination or just go to this page yourself. Either way, she looks so disgusted at the person she's looking at, which will be you if you buy it, but outside of that, it really is just a maid changing her clothes. You get like this little chair with the apron hanging over it, which is a nice touch. The plush cushion kind of being pressed down a little bit by her feet, and the wooden flooring has a really nice appearance to it as well, but you're looking for like the curves and the sexiness of the character, right? And Amakuni is definitely delivering there with the thigh highs and the garter belts and the lacy panties, and you could take off the top too, which again, I ain't gonna show you, but it looks good. Amakuni will do a good job here. Not like a super colorful, vibrant figure or anything, but I do love the shading on her hair, and the skin shading also looks perfect in my opinion. But yeah, another really nice figure, I think, is the Q's Q belongs to Mars District 13 Middle Close Quarters Combat Type Maid Mary, 1/7 scale. 23,000 yen, that ain't bad at all. We did just see this one at One Fest, so I feel like I've kind of said everything I really wanted to in that video. It's just really impressively painted. I just really like the paint apps here. The shading for her hair, the purple highlights, and the gradation for the tips in the back. Really like the pattern work running through the maid outfit as well. Her boots have a really nice gloss to them, which you can see better in this photo. And the thigh highs that kind of replicate or resemble like a sheer material. Looks very pretty in my opinion. The axe looks awesome, kind of has like this futuristic feel to it. And I think the one thing we did learn by this figure finally going up for pre-order is that you could take off the skirt, because of course you can. But yeah, pretty damn nice battle-made figure. Another one that we saw at One Fest though was the formidable still illustration version from Azur Lane for 22,500 yen. I don't think they added anything to this figure since the last time we saw it, like an additional faceplate or some customization to it. Kind of surprised you can't even like take the card out of the cleavage if you want to, or maybe they're just not demonstrating that. Though it is more like playful having it, you know, wedged between there. So I think it's a good idea. I would keep it if I were to buy this figure. I will say, I think they could have done a better job with the chest sculpt. This weld doesn't look that great, but that's really my only issue with this figure. I think everything else about it is very pretty. Attractive face, very curvy body, pretty skimpy clothing, and an inviting pose. Kind of just the whole package right here. Definitely a fan of her colors as well. They're very fitting for Formidable. And I like some of this translucent plastic over like the dress around the chest and going down her tummy. I think it's a really nice execution, just the outfit in general. And that fluffy boa or shoal around her shoulders, so thick and comfy looking. I really like it. And it does kind of complete the overall design. So that one's lovely. I think from Apex, we also had a figure from League of Legends, the KDA all-out version of Kaisa for about 18,000 yen. Again, another figure that we saw at One Fest, and nothing has really changed about this one. But I don't think I recognize that light blue streak running through her ponytail. And now I'm definitely getting a better look at like her sleeves and that like crystallized pattern running through it. And that gradation looks awesome too. But yeah, last up for Apex was the Zenless Zone Zero Corin Wix 1/7 scale for about 22,000 yen with her big pizza cutter. Doesn't seem like she has the best handle on it, so she's got this like clumsy appearance, which I think is pretty cute. In fact, as I look at this figure a little bit closer, it does look like she's literally scratching up the base, which is a pretty sick detail. Though I should also mention the cute little teddy bear on her back, or I should say, kind of cute, maybe, because of like its eyes being bolts or like screws, which is kind of like a design element running throughout her entire character. So it's certainly very fitting, and I do dig it. It's pretty different. There's so many belts on this character too, 3 around each wrist. That seems like overkill. So we have from Union Creative a bunch of To Love Ru figures, the Darkness Tierju and Mikan. These are re-releases for 16,000 and 17,000, though they're also making a Golden Darkness or Yami version of this for 25,000 yen. That's how you could tell that this one's the new one, because the price is so much higher. They will put Yami in literally anything and everything outside of her normal outfit. Like, when's the last time we got a figure of her normal costume? It's been years, like maybe like 8 years or something. Here is a figure from Chain Soldier of Tenka Izumo, the swimsuit version, also from Union Creative, for about 21,000 yen. Way too much money. I do like her design. She's just a good looking character, but like, what are we doing here to warrant 21,000 yen for such a simple swimsuit figure that is only a 1/7 scale as well? You might have gotten away with it if it was a 1/6 scale, but not at the 1/7. From Proof is a new figure of Rysalind Stout, the night clothes version, for about 19,000 yen. I feel like the execution leaves a little bit to be desired, kind of looks like a premium price figure to me, and also doesn't really look like her that much. I don't know, for some reason, kind of reminds me of Korone, especially like the design of her night clothes. but maybe that's just because I'm Corona pilled, I don't know. I do like her messy hair, and just like the expression of her waking up. It's cute, but it does look a little bit drab at the same time. Here is a figure from Shuna Yamashita, an OC figure, for about 22,000 yen from Flare. We saw this one at One Fest as well. Seems like there's a little bit of customization to it, as you could put on or take off the sailor uniform, and you could also take off her glasses if you would like to. We got Shimapan, pigtails, these lavender thigh highs, and a big ass sword. It's a pretty interesting design overall. Next up though, we have the Hatsune Miku Project Sakai Champion 2022 Autumn version from Shibuya Scramble figure for about 27,000 yen. This one's pretty busy, and I'm not really sure how much I'm liking it right now. There was a lot of emphasis put into her hair sculpt though, not even just the twin tails curling and swooping at the bottom, but also her bangs. It's pretty damn nicely sculpted, all things considered, but there's just so much of it, and then they're throwing in like all of these triangles, that it just looks a little messy to me. I do like the vibrancy of this figure, especially within the shapes. You could even see like a halftone pattern running through each and every triangle. But yeah, I think ultimately I'm just like not liking her face that much. It's cute in a way, but also slightly off-putting for some reason. I don't know, I can't really explain it. But it does look a little bit too messy for my liking. We had a few swimsuit figures from our treasure of Carol as well as Scotty, both for about 20,000 yen, which I think is atrocious just based on the simplicity of their designs, especially this one. This should not cost 20,000 yen. There was also the Sunflower Girl from Plum for about 19,000 yen, and this one's pretty charming just based on the concept alone. She's holding sunflowers, there's a sunflower pattern on the bikini, even the hair clip is a sunflower, but she's also got this nice plaid shirt and a really endearing smile. Just wish they were doing a little bit with the base, just something of a setting, and that would have completed this one, but it's still fine in my opinion. Couple more Azur Lane figures, Richelu from Reverse Studio and Annie Game, 26,000 yen, fully equipped for the beach. She is ready to go, even has a little cat companion down there, which is pretty adorable. I do think her suitcase is kind of tacky though. I don't like this cloud pattern over the diamonds. Something about that just looks weird to me, but she's very pretty. I think everything about like her and just like what she brought to the beach looks pretty damn good. There was also a figure of Asanagi, lulled by the rough seas from Fat Company for about 27,000 yen. Pretty damn expensive for like a rather petite character at the 1/7 scale. You got the Manju enjoying his ice, but like, there's no beach setting here. What's really adding to the price, I suppose, is her hair and tail, which are pretty long, though I don't know if that really justifies the 27,000 yen price tag. But yeah, I think there was another one. Here we have Prinz Heinrich from Golden Head for about 23,000 yen. Just saw this one too. I believe they gave her a crying faceplate on top of the cuter happy faceplate that she comes with, which we can see somewhere in this gallery. There you go. I guess with the crying faceplate, which is what they call it, it might be like yawning, right? But maybe there's some other thing going on here that I'm not sure about. I do like this design quite a bit though. The wrinkly jacket and her very long hair that's like braided towards the bottom. It's a nice look. Plus like the dark kind of edgy palette alongside her whitish gray hair. I think it's a great look. I really do like her design. And then there was Kier Saint, the Reverent Runner version from Alice Glint for about 22,000 yen. Just went on a run. You know, it's not too often we get a figure with yoga pants and a top, so that kind of makes this one stand out to me. It does look like they've made her body a little bit glossy to imply that she's been sweating, and she's leaning against this railing, so it's not like a basic base by any means. There's even like little bits chipped away at the silver paint just to imply that like they got scuffed up or something just by being outside and whatnot. From the weather, or animals, or people, I don't know, but I like that attention to detail. It's nice. And our last Azur Lane figure is Friedrich Karl, a Game of Love version, 1/6 scale from Ami Ami and Annie Game for 23,000 yen, which I don't really know anything about this one, so I guess we'll go through it together. Very busty character, that's front and center on the figure. I like her goat horns as well. Glasses is a great look. Hair draping over the shoulders, rather pretty. I guess she's watching TV. Not sure if you get the rug with this figure. It's certainly implied. That's a lot of butt. Okay. Yeah, no, I get it. No, I definitely get it. But every photo, okay, every photo is just the butt now. Yeah, you know, she's sexy. There you go. 23,000 yen, and this lovely figure of Friedrich can be yours. Honestly, not that bad of a price for a 1/6 scale with such a lore. But I think with that, I'ma wrap it up. There's a couple more. I'm losing my voice though, and it's Friday night. I need to edit this. But yeah, I didn't really have that much else to say about the remaining figures anyway, so I think it's okay. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Pre-Order Roundup. If you liked or hated any of these figures, let me know in the comments down below. If you want to have a chat, I'm down to talk as well. Leave me a like if you enjoyed this video, and I guess you could dislike it if you hated it. And if you're feeling a little bit generous today, I do have a Patreon if you would like to support me that way, get some bonus videos every now and then, as well as early access. But yeah, I'm going to go edit this now, hopefully out by the weekend, and I'll catch you guys very soon for the next one. Later.